In a world where it seems totally normal to listen to a podcast about the Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough brought to you by Funny Bone Broth. My name is Ben Grant, joined as always by JB as we get you set for round 3 of Hamilton versus Toronto. On the docket today, we're going to talk a little bit about Sage Dockstader, who has been put on injured reserve with New Orleans, what that means for the Argos. Do they need offensive line help from somewhere else? We're going to talk about the Jagera Davis injury and an article that Mike Mitchell wrote on CFL News Hub about Davis, Speedy Banks, and Andrew Harris. So we'll get into that. We want to talk a little bit about Chad Kelly and some of the, I think, misconceptions people have about our views of Chad Kelly. Plus, we'll get into Dane Evans or Matt Schultz, who we think will start this week. And by the time you listen to this, you may know, but we'll also tell you who we would start. Plus, the injury report, OCDC, one thing, fantasy advice, and our picks. All that and more coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. All right, JB, just before we get started, I think I got to explain some of the background noise I got going on here. I know sometimes it may sound like I'm at a party, not a good one, but at a party. I'm in Quebec City and recording. They're very kind to let me record in this sort of quiet corner of the turret bar here. So I'm doing my best. Hopefully we will be interruption free, but if you hear any music in the background, that's what's going on here. JB, any music where you are?
No, I'm excited. We're live to tape. You won't be able to edit out my hottest takes, and
That's right.
let's get it on.
All right, let's get things started with Sage Dockstader. So, Toronto Argonauts 2021 second round pick. There was some hope, I know, going into this season that Sage Dockstader may end up joining the Argos midway through. I think a lot of people felt as an undrafted player for the Saints, maybe he gets cut, maybe he ends up joining Toronto. I always thought this was too much of a long shot, because I think even at that, just making it to the stage when you're a late cut like this, there's a good chance you end up on someone else's practice squad, or even if you don't, you work out for a few months, see if someone signs you when people get injured. So I just didn't think there's any chance we'd see Dockstader here this season at all. It's not saying that it'll never happen, but I just don't see it at all at this point. That makes sense, I assume, to you.
Yeah, when guys are invited to camp, that pretty much means they're gone for 2 or 3 years. They're gonna bounce around practice squads. They're gonna bounce around other camp invites. If you get a camp invite and you're young, to me, that's probably a 3-year window for sure where you're not going to see them. And you see guys who come to the NFL, or the CFL, from the NFL. Usually they have like 2-3 years of invite and camp, and then they come to the CFL. I think that's the likelier timeline for him, is probably 3 years.
And then following up on that, camp cuts are happening.
Yeah.
Fast and furious in the NFL right now. Should the Argos be looking for tackle help at this point?
Yes, for sure. I think that's going to be harder to pull, because certainly in the NFL, offensive linemen will get endless chances. I think we should also be looking at running back help.
Yeah, I could see that too, and maybe that's even more of a concern. The tackle situation for me, because you're basically 3 tackles that Toronto has on their roster. 2 are out, and we don't know when we'll see again in Cage and Tate. And then you've got Dejon Allen, who is doing, toughing it out every week, but he's not right. He's not 100%. If he were, he'd be playing left tackle for one. But even at that, just watching him play at left tackle, he's not the same guy. He's letting guys burn him around the outside. He's just not able to move that well right now. So, who knows? We don't even know for sure if he's going to play this week. He's questionable as of now. So what I think they could do, because it is hard to find tackles, certainly, but that's not really who they're looking for. If you look at NFL cuts, what they're looking for is a guy that played tackle in college and was not the right size in the NFL and was immediately going to be a guard project in the NFL, or maybe has been for a couple of years and is now going to get released in favor of this year's draft picks, etc. But that's what you want, a guy that, tackle in college, undersized, was always planning to be a guard in the NFL, didn't quite cut it, and now he can come up here and be a tackle. But the thing is, again, it's not as easy as, well, those are final cuts, that's it, because guys aren't willing to throw away the chance at that paycheck. Because even the practice squad paycheck in the NFL, even if you end up signing that in October, November, is still going to be way more than they would make coming up north here. So it's just not really worth the risk for most guys. But you never know. There could be that guy that just maybe this is the last straw for him in the NFL.
You don't see a lot of that. Like wide receiver, running back. You see CFL after NFL camps. If a lineman is good enough for an invite, somebody's going to keep. I mean, guys bounce around. Bobby Hart looks like he's going to start in Buffalo, for God's sakes. Guys bounce around in that league at offensive line. There just isn't enough of them in the world.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And the guys you do see coming up tend to be more quickly are guys that have played in the CFL, that have CFL experience, like, with Devontae Dedmon, for example, being one. Those are guys that are more likely to come back sooner and get some more playing time under the belt, etc. So I don't know if I see that happening. They're obviously looking. It's not like they're asleep at the wheel here. They're aware. They're more aware than we are, I'm sure, as to the severity of the tackle situation and the seriousness of it. So believe me, they're looking. But I wouldn't be surprised still, even at that, and even all that we've said, I wouldn't be surprised to see someone come in at some point over the next few weeks. Let's talk about that Mike Mitchell article. He wrote a nice piece for CFL News Hub. Mike Mitchell does great work, and just a quick shout out to him. If you're not following him on Twitter and reading his content, it's really good stuff. And this week he put out a piece on the three big offseason signings that Toronto made in Ja'Gared Davis, Speedy Banks, and Andrew Harris, and kind of, looking at what that has turned into. These guys are costing a lot of money. We now got Ja'Gared Davis, who's going to be out for probably 6 weeks with a meniscus injury, a knee injury. And we know Andrew Harris is done for the year. And Speedy Banks, while he's healthy, has not really lived up to expectations. I think maybe of the three guys has probably performed the least out of those three signings. JB, are these, can we say at this point that these are incorrect moves? Are you not willing to make that call yet? Or do you think the injuries kind of factor in a little bit?
Yeah, they're not busts. They were always gambles. All three are older guys. Anytime you sign an older guy, you are rolling the dice, hoping to get really probably one more good season out of them, even if you're paying them for more than one. Injuries happen, and you can't predict that. So I don't. It's hard to say. I mean, if you look at the team, what would the team have been like if they hadn't signed any of these guys? Are they in first place right now? No. I submit, no, they are not. I think that all three, even, Speedy, who's been up and down, I think all three have been crucial to victories. And unfortunately, when you sign old guys, like buying an old car, sometimes things break. So I think it's bad luck for Davis. I think Harris was probably the riskiest one. I wouldn't call it bad luck because, he's an older running back. That's injury is probable. You were hoping to avoid it, but probable. And Speedy Banks, I wasn't expecting that much. I mean, he's, he should not be a primary aspect of the offense. At this age in his career, I think if he is a bit like Chester last year, that's really a problem. That's not his. That's more an organizational issue, because I don't think he should come in and be the number one target guy. He should be on the edges at getting 4 or 5 targets, and maybe you try a couple punt returns with him. I think that he probably is being overused a bit. So I'm gonna vote bad luck and not bust. I think the signings were smart, and they hope to roll sixes, and they roll snake eyes.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you on that. Although I think the Harris injury is more bad luck, and I do think it was the biggest risk of the three. But I don't feel like that's what actually happened. Like I think what we were thinking would happen would be a more traditional running back injury or a lack of performance, him just not having it. And he clearly did have it. Andrew Harris looked great before everybody started putting their entire team in the box. He looked fantastic, and he was forcing defenses to play a certain way, and so that's what you want. Now, I'm still not sure Andrew Harris was the right guy to sign, because I'm still not sure. Well, actually, I am quite sure he does not really fit properly into Coach Dinwiddie's offense. I just don't see him. He's just not the kind of player that you would have around that type of system. But again, that's not really what we're discussing today. Jagger Davis, same thing. I think he's been fine, but it's just it's a weird injury. It happens to everybody. This can happen to you at 25. It's more likely to happen when you're a little bit older. And Speedy Banks isn't really what they're using him as. And you got into that a little bit as well. You notice that like when Eric Rogers came back and everyone was sort of healthy, Speedy Banks wasn't on the field. He was coming off the bench, and to me, that's what he is this year. That's what he should be. He should be a guy that can come off the bench and play pretty much any spot, give you a burst of excitement, a burst of speed, have a huge explosive play. But he's being relied upon to do way too much when he's getting like 10 targets in games. That's not where he is right now, like you said. So I feel like it's not so much that the moves were wrong. It's a combination of some bad luck and them maybe not using all the players in the best way possible. Let's get into this Chad Kelly discussion. So we've spent a lot of time over the last few weeks defending McLeod Bethel Thompson, and somewhere along the way, people seem to have got it in their heads that we don't like Chad Kelly, and I want to correct that a little bit. So Chad Kelly. First of all, I wrote an article on him when they first signed him. I've been following Chad Kelly since he was a kid, basically. I remember seeing there was a Buffalo News story on him winning a punt pass kick contest, and he was throwing the ball like 70 yards in the air. He's like 14 years old. And I remember finding it really interesting and just finding out his ties to Jim Kelly and thinking, okay, that's kind of interesting. And I would check in to see how he was doing in high school and just sort of followed his career and through college as well. I've been a Chad Kelly fan for a long time. I think he is a very good football player. He was an excellent D1 player. I have sort of chronicled some of the troubles that he's had and the issues that he's run into, but I believe those are part of his past now. And so I don't really have concerns about Chad Kelly. I actually think Chad Kelly has what it takes to be a successful CFL quarterback. That said, it's not going to happen this year. I just don't think that's this year. So I have nothing against him. I'm excited to see what he does next year. The year after that, I think that's when he'll be ready and he'll be able to actually get starts, to get playing time, to maybe be at the point where he can lead a team. Maybe he is the starting quarterback for the Toronto Argos next year. I'd be fine with that if that's what he shows, and I wouldn't be surprised by that. I'm just saying this year, that's not the answer.
No, exactly. The goal is to win the Grey Cup. This team, although leaking oil, is still, it's the CFL, is still in the conversation for a shot at the Grey Cup if, some good luck comes their way and maybe they can add a couple of pieces. They're right there. They are competitive with everybody. I know BC blew the doors off them, but this is a team that has, at least right now, a shot at the Grey Cup. And to suggest you should take your quarterback out, who is ranked in the top 3 in almost every important category, is madness. I don't understand what people want. People want to be the Elks. People want to be the Red Blacks. You can't start in the CFL as a rookie. It just, any more than a first-year med student is going to take your appendix out. He's not ready to start. It would not be successful. I think it's a combination of rookie starters doing well in the NFL, and people see that. People look at other teams that have two quarterbacks. Hamilton brings in two guys, and you got Rourke, and he seems like a kid out west, and people don't really do the research into, like Schultz this is year 5 for Schultz, not year 1, so these guys are around. This is year 3 for Rourke. So I don't know if people necessarily know that. So I think that's where some of the frustration comes from. I agree with you. We saw Chad Kelly at practice, and we both said on the podcast, he looks great. He's, the ball explodes out of his hand. He's got a bit of wiggle to him. I wouldn't say he's a running threat, but he's got a bit of athleticism to him. It's just going to take time. You just can't start in the CFL as a rookie. So,
and you see that in practice too. Like we watch him just running the offense and getting his reps in practice. He's not where Bethel Thompson is, and that's not his fault. He shouldn't be. But just getting to see these plays, it's maybe that's what people need to see as well. Maybe I think it would be a different story if he were absolutely lighting it up at practice and dominating in every single session he had, every rep of Skelly and 12s. That'd be a different story, but that's not happening. He's ahead of where he should be. I don't think there's any question about that, and he looks exciting. And I'm really excited for him for next year, but that's not what's happening out there.
And look, quarterback is not the issue with this team. It just isn't. I could give you 5 things that have to get fixed before we start talking about who the quarterback is.
Staying on the quarterback topic, let's talk about Hamilton. So Dane Evans or Matt Schultz this week. I initially was kind of just thinking Evans would start. And then I started looking. I kind of forgot about, because you and I were both at BMO during the Ticats Alouettes game. We were watching it, but not as closely as we might normally. I didn't realize how good Schultz's stats were last week, and so given that, I think it's gonna be pretty tough not to start Schultz. Having over 300 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no picks. I guess it was a revenge game for Schultz, like I had said, and that's why I had him in my fantasy lineup. But I think it'd be tough to start Dane Evans this week based on that. That being said, I think Dane Evans is the better quarterback, and I think if it were me and I were making that call, I think I would start Evans. I think he'd be my guy out there. So who do you expect, and who would you start?
Yeah, this is the danger of the two-headed monster is you get put into these positions. I don't know what the personalities are like. They seem to be okay with being interchangeable. I would start Schultz. Agreed. I think that he gives you a dynamic aspect to the offense that Evans has had a bit of a harder time doing. Evans seems okay with coming in the second half if he needs to. So I would go Schultz too. I think you have to see what you have. Look, if Schultz can throw for 300 yards every game, then I think you just have a really good backup quarterback in Dane Evans.
Evans does come off the bench well. You reminded me, it's a painful memory that I kind of blocked out. But yeah, I think every Argos fan knows how well Dane Evans does coming off the bench. So maybe that is the way to go. Start Schultz and have Evans ready to go in case things start falling apart. I don't actually expect, if Schultz starts, I don't actually expect him to look great against the Argos, because I think the Argos will probably prepare more for him. And JB, I don't know if I can take watching Evans come off the bench against the Argos yet again. We're going to have flashbacks of last season.
I know. I mean, just really, like I said before, just really tired of watching the number 2 quarterback come in and go for 90% for the win. It has been very frustrating, and I cannot rule that out happening on Friday.
Is it too much to ask that the quarterback Toronto expects to see plays the majority of the snaps for 1 week? I feel like it's been a long time since that's occurred.
I don't know what to make of it. I guess every other team in the league is just willing to take their quarterback out at the drop of a hat. And probably that's where some of this Chad Kelly stuff comes from. Yeah, it is very frustrating to try and plan a defense when you have two very different quarterbacks and you don't know which one is going to start. It's the damnedest thing that they've had this year. I don't know. And probably, the Labor Day game will be a new quarterback too, depending how this game goes.
I know it'll be the other guy.
Yeah, right.
It's completely maddening. But this speaks to the lack of quality quarterbacks that there are in other teams, and again, why? Not to get back to, because we've spent so much time talking about Bethel Thompson, Chad Kelly, just over the last few months. But this is the thing. Like, most teams don't have a guy, and Toronto does have a guy. He's up there on the leaderboard in terms of active quarterbacks. He's now number 2 in the league behind Zach Collaros. He's a ways back, but Nathan Rourke is probably out for the season now. And after McLeod Bethel Thompson, there's really no one else. Like, Bo Levi Mitchell is the next best guy, and he's not even starting this week. And he got pulled last week, and he's the next best quarterback.
He's Look, I know. I don't want to keep. But I know when I was at the game and I could hear the boos, I wanted to grab the microphone from the announcer and just be like, what are you booing? He's objectively one of the 2 best quarterbacks in this league. So there are issues here, but this is not the issue, folks. So maybe
I would love to have seen you grab the mic from Adam and yell that. Adam would actually have been pretty cool with it.
I would have asked for just a moment. I just like everybody's attention for a moment. What are you doing?
That would have been amazing.
Yeah, especially the guy sitting in front of me. That guy. Anyways.
Let's get into our injury report for this week. It probably favors Toronto slightly. Hamilton's missing a ton of guys, kind of like they were last week, but they got Simone Lawrence has already been ruled out. Deontay Evans is out. Jake Burt is out. The Jake Burt one is actually pretty big because they're already pretty banged up there. He's been used a lot more the last few weeks since Braylon Addison's injury, so that does hurt them. Lawrence Woods out, who murdered the Argos on punt returns, kick returns. Jamie Newman, who had the 30-yard quarterback sneak, is out, and center Alex Fontana. That's a lot of guys that are out. Plus, they've got a couple guys that are questionable or doubtful. Dylan Wynn, I think he's actually going to play, though, and Bailey Feltmay, that's, I guess, less of a big deal, but he probably is not. So that's the situation for Hamilton, but they're ripe for the picking. There's a lot of guys down there, and we've had some pretty bad injury luck in Toronto. But Hamilton seems to have the injury bug at the moment.
Yeah, the game is there to be won for sure. Anytime you lose first overall pick Jake Burt, that's going to be a big hole.
You love saying that. You love bringing that up. He's actually, as much as we made fun of that, he's actually turned into a pretty good CFL player, a pretty useful guy, finally getting his shot. But yeah, he took a pretty nasty looking hit last week. And it's unfortunate that he's not able to go for Hamilton, obviously. But these are some big names, and they are some guys that have produced over the last, for some of them for years. Like Simone Lawrence, as much as he bothers everybody, is an extremely good player. Having him at will versus not having him at will is night and day in terms of what that gives you on the football field. So, not having him there is a huge hole for Hamilton that they just won't be able to fill. And the offensive line problems they've already had, not having Fontana out there is probably going to hurt them as well. On the Toronto side of things, Jagger Davis has already been ruled out. We know that. And Toronto has not yet really declared anyone else out. And by the time you hear this, they may have. It's usually something that would be coming out tomorrow, Thursday, for a Friday game. But they've got sort of what I view as 2 tiers of questionable. So here are the guys that I think probably aren't going to play, who are listed as questionable. So the 2 tight ends, Joe Carbone, Declan Cross, I don't really expect either of those guys to play. You'd like to hope that one of them could. I don't think it's going to be Carbone. I think it's more likely to be Cross. So maybe Cross can go, because right now as it stands, they don't have a single fullback on the roster, which is fine. Like, if you're going to go with it one position, that would be it. But it's not ideal. Eli Menser and Tommy Neild, I don't think those guys are going to go. Robert Priester, we've seen him play or at least dress after not really practicing all week, but I just don't see that this week either. So I think those guys aren't going to go. And then the questionable guys that will go, I think Dejan Allen is going to somehow tape his body together and get out there, which is good because there's just not a lot going on behind him. And without him, having only Blake and Richards as your only two tackles would not be great. Dylan Giffen, I think, is going to be healthy enough to play, and he may actually dress based on what's been going on the Argos line, and without dressing a fullback, that could be something that we see. Josh Haggerty, I think, will go. Enoch Penny-Lawyer, he's been limited the last couple of days, but I think he's going to give it a go as well. So that's the Toronto injury picture. JB, we've seen worse, but it comes back to the tackle thing. I think over everything else, that even with all the receivers that Toronto is missing and how much I would like to get Eric Rogers back, etc., I just wish more than anything else we could see some of those injured tackles back in, or bringing some other tackle back in. I hate the feeling of everything being held together with tape on the offensive line every week, and having so many guys out of position. It's caught up with them already, but I just can't stand that feeling going into game day.
It will be a challenge. Hamilton is definitely going to try and heat them up. Hamilton's definitely going to run blitz on first down. It's a problem. The book is out there, and when the book is out on you, you better be able to find a plan B, or it makes for a very long season.
It's time for OCDC. All right, JB, you start things off first. You are the defensive coordinator for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. What is your game plan against the taped together Toronto Argonauts offense?
Yeah, I mean, I go with what people have shown. I'm playing tight man coverage. I am run blitzing on first down. I am blitzing on second down. I'm just bringing lots of heat and daring those receivers to get open. And, if they can't get open in 2.5 seconds, that's going to work out great for us. I think that we want them to run. So if they're going to run on first down, I think we probably offer them a slightly lighter box to invite AJ Ouellette and Leak. And then, when it's 2nd and 9, then everybody pin their ears back and meet at the quarterback. I think that is definitely the plan. I think that Toronto is going to need man beaters. They're going to need bunches. They're going to need misdirection. They're going to need stuff to I don't think the screen game is that dangerous right now. They're going to need things to slow down that pass rush, because for sure, we are going to on second and long, we are bringing heat every single time.
Moving over to the Hamilton offense, I've just been noticing the last few weeks that Toronto's letting up a lot of room in the flats. So typically in zone coverage, when you're dropping back into zones, flats defenders, they're going to drop back. They're keeping an eye on the flats, but it's not like flats defenders aren't just like sitting there in the flats as plays develop. That's not how you play that. If you're going to give up something, it's going to be the short pass. And so, for example, there's a play that I've been preparing for my film session this week, in which Calgary has 3 different levels. They're attacking the flats, they're attacking mid-range, and they're attacking deep with a corner. And the way that 2 defenders are going to play this is they're really going to guard the deep 2 guys. You're not going to leave the guy in the corner route open. You're not going to leave the deep out open. You're going to leave the guy in the flats open, and then you'll close that once it's thrown. But when you look at the Argos defense, they're really giving up ground. It's more than other teams have. They seem to be trying more than ever to prevent that big play. And you watched last week in the Calgary game, some of those short checkdowns turned into really big plays. So not just turning into a 6-yard catch and run, but turning into 15 and 20 yards. And I think that's going to be the start of my game plan for Toronto. So I'm going to run some of those 3-level floods and look for the short receiver. I'm going to throw to late leakouts from the running back once the linebackers have fanned way the heck out there and all the DBs have dropped deep into coverage. I think that's where you have to start. So start with your flood plays, start with your taking shorts, start with leaks to the running back, and you get into the screen game as well. Running back screen I'm talking about specifically, not receiver screen. Toronto actually does play those fairly well. And I think that's going to be the basis of it. And then depending on how Toronto adjusts for that, you look to either hit them over top or pick on the mid-range. And so I think this is a game of throwing to the trip side, throwing to, creating rollouts. I think are good, and that's a great part of Schultz's game. If he's the quarterback that plays, you roll to the right and have 3 different levels going, and see how Toronto defends it, and expect that you're probably going to be going short to start and then take advantage of it later. All right, let's switch over to the good guys. JB, what is your defensive plan for the double blue?
Yeah. Well, Hamilton, we know them. We've played them. We don't know who's going to start. I'm guessing Schultz starts. He's got a big arm. He wants to throw it down the field. I think that from a defensive point of view, we're not a team that gets sacks, and so I prefer the 3-man rush most of the time, because it's just not who we are. So it's just a waste to have 4-man rushing. I'm not worried about Don Jackson running for 150 yards. It's not really what he's built to do. Worried about the deep pass. Worried about White and Dunbar, and we're looking to take away that deep pass. I think that's what the Argo defense has done pretty well. I agree with you with the underneath stuff. They definitely have kind of gone with this bend, don't break model, and it's worked pretty well. Where basically you come up and you give up some first downs, but you're basically like, okay, I'll give you that first down. I'll even give you 2 of them, but you're not gonna drop a 75-yard bomb on us. And I've liked that. I think that it's worked pretty well, and I think that's what we're doing here. We're gonna look to keep deep coverage. We're gonna be looking to take that away and force Schultz to kill us with the underneath, and then come red zone, we're ready. We tight man coverage. We're very good at run in the red zone. The run defense in the red zone has been top flight. So that's where I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 6-7 DBs on the field a lot, and take away the pass. And if they want to run Don Jackson 22 times, then we'll see how that goes.
In terms of the Toronto offense, I want to change things up a little bit. I want to get McLeod Bethel-Thompson moving out of the pocket. He actually throws pretty well on the run, running to his right. He's really patient with it, and he's also got a bunch of receivers that are really good at getting open in scramble rules. Now, I'm not saying you just invoke scramble rules from the snap of the ball like schoolyard. Everyone go and find some space, but having those play designs, kind of like I was talking about before with the Hamilton offense, where you roll for floods and stuff. I want to see some of that from MBT, not only because it helps out his offensive line a little bit. It certainly helps out Dejon Allen, who was beat around the outside a lot in the last couple of weeks. If he's rolling, then that helps you, because you can actually lose inside and have it not be the end of the world. So it helps him as a lineman. You also often will get a chip from a running back that will come up and sort of help you roll. So I think that, for one thing, helps. The other thing I think it does is it's a bit of a disadvantage for the Hamilton DBs, who haven't really seen much of that from him before. And suddenly, when you change the launch point, it does make defending as a DB a lot more difficult. So you have him roll out. That changes the angles from which the passes are coming from. That affects your coverage. And in a game where we've seen the Argos receivers just blanketed over the last few weeks, and I kind of expect to see that again. There's going to be a lot of man. Changing the launch point can make the difference there. You change the angle that the ball is coming at them from. Guys are suddenly a little bit more open, and Hamilton will have to address. You can't do it every play, and I'm not even saying you do it half the time, but I want to see some of that to start.
Yeah, to jump in, watching it, Toronto, as defensive guys often do when they rage about the offense. Toronto has to get way more misdirection involved. Way more plays that are built upon the other team's pass rush coming. Some trick plays. They're not good enough to win right now on offense. Just lining up and playing ball. You're gonna need to be a little more underdoggy, a little more kitchen sink. Okay, let's try this double reverse. Let's try halfback option. Let's put two guys in the backfield and run chopsticks out of it, or just jet, just way more varied. Like from a defensive coordinator point of view, I always used to say to my OC, the only thing that scares me, the only two things that ever scared me as a defensive coordinator, were formations I had not seen before on film and motion. If you don't have those two things, like, I'll play ball with any team and any athlete except for maybe like guys who end up in the NFL from St. Roch. Other than that team, we'll line up and play any team that is not running that motion, because it's just, from a defensive point of view, it's so easy when you don't have to have any concern about where's the ball. And Toronto, I think, needs way more misdirection in their offense.
Well, JB, thank you for stealing the second part of my segment on OCDC.
Is that what you're going to say?
I have and some of it, but not quite that extreme. Mine makes sense. Yeah, it's so I don't have double reverses down or anything like that. But yeah, there needs to be misdirection. Now, what I have is Toronto's been running a lot of receiver screens and kind of the quick running back screen that really replaces like a receiver bubble screen. What I want to do is fake that one way and then go the other way with a quick receiver screen. So get those linebackers out, and you're going to get your linemen going the other way. So I'm not explaining this well. If you're a visual person, you're imagining McLeod Bethel-Thompson basically pump faking to the left, and there being a screen clearly set up over there, but he's not actually throwing it. Instead, the offensive linemen are like immediately pulling right, and you go back to the right for a quick receiver screen on the other side. And you should have numbers now, because the linebackers are going to bite on the first direction, because they've seen the Argos run it all year, and we haven't run one of those fake left, go right. We haven't seen the Argos run that all year. The other thing I want to see is some double moves off stuff that Hamilton has seen on film already. There are a ton of plays that Toronto can just tweak a little bit, run back out there. Hamilton's seen these two games now. They've seen the film of those two games now. You run what looks like that exact same play, but now there's a hitch and go to it. Now there's an out and up or whatever it is. The only question is, will they have time for that? Can they pass protect for that long?
I want
and then
double reverses.
No double reverses. And then the last part is the sort of pump and go on screens. We saw one of those against Saskatchewan with Phillips, but it was a pretty short one. The Phillips corner touchdown was on a fake screen pump and go to Phillips. But I want to see a couple of those. They've run so many receiver screens that they've now got to start building off of that. And I think Hamilton, with some guys there who are banged up in the secondary and playing out of position in the secondary, I think this is the team to take advantage of with those elements. So that's how I would attack the Hamilton Tiger Cats. All right, JB, it's time for our one thing here. I was going to say our prediction. That's coming up. This is time for our one thing. We've been hitting on some more of these lately. What's your one thing for this week?
Well, I'll dial it back a tiny bit. What I want to see is a reverse play. In my mind, what I see, you bring Alette to the, to wing, and you bring him across on the snap of the ball, jet, and you got Speedy coming the other way, and here we go.
They haven't run a play like that in a long time. The last time I saw them run that was like 2017. I know I'm trying to remember who it was, but the 2017, I remember watching a play. I know this because I stole it, and I remember thinking, like, it looks so much like a sweep to one side. It just, everything about it looked like that, and it was a beautifully set up reverse. But I'm gonna have to look that play up. But
I want a reverse.
All right,
I'm with you on that. Doesn't have to be
to
Speedy, but I want a reverse to a wide receiver or leak.
My one thing doesn't sound very exciting, but it's something that I really wanted to see last week, and we didn't. So last week there was a lot of short yardage plays, and we saw Chad Kelly take it around the outside, which it was good. That's what I'd been calling for. I wanted that. I talked about that in my film session last week, but they ran it 4 times. And as we talked about on the postgame pod this past week, you can't go to the well 4 times. You can do it a few times, but you can't keep doing it. And you can bet this week that Hamilton is going to be ready for those outside runs from Chad Kelly. And so my one thing this week is, out of that short yardage Chad Kelly package, I want to see one of 2 things. I either want to see a pass out of that short yardage package, which would be very exciting, just to get him to actually throw the ball around in a game. We haven't seen that since the BC game, where it went horribly wrong for Chad and he got knocked over backwards and threw a pick. I want to see him throw a pass in that short yardage setup. If not, then I want to see a traditional quarterback sneak up the middle. If they're defending the outsides, then don't run outside. It's not a lot to ask, but that's what I'm looking for. A pass in short yardage or a traditional sneak up the middle, because there's no one up the middle. All right, predictions, JB. Where are you going with this one? What is the score? How will it end?
I have not been on fire. One might even say I've been a cooler recently with my picks. I think this is the season for the Argonauts. I'm going to put that out there right now. They're at home, and then they're on the road for the length of a Bible, and they have to win. And they have to win this game. I think it's must win. I think they have to have it. I think they do get it. Like, the power of the X compels them. I like Argos 28 and Hamilton 21.
That's my exact same score. I've got 28-21 Argos.
That's what you always say.
No, but I don't want to copy you. Look at your record. It's
my
ridiculous.
Record is fine. It's been subject to a variety of unfortunate situations.
Yeah. So 2021 Argos, same thing. I think Toronto's a better team, but it's also more important for them. They have to win this game. It's a pretty big game. They lose this, and they're in full tailspin mode heading out onto the road. Just carrying a losing streak in here to begin with, it's trouble. It's trouble if they don't win. So I think they're going to come out pretty serious. And you were at practice this week. It seemed like a team that was all business, right?
Good energy. I really liked the energy. I thought, yeah, definitely, like, dialed in. I loved the pace of the practice. I loved, just from a coaching point of view, I loved how there was no downtime, and players were moving quickly between drills. A lot of working on, fundamental plays, and I was really happy with the level of intensity of practice. It did not look like a team that was losing, looked like a team that was still having fun with each other, but also dialed in and looking to get better. It struck me like the Halifax practice, a dialed in, ready to go practice. At no point would a coach have to get anybody's attention. They were, the guys on the field were definitely juiced up and ready to roll.
It is time for our world-famous fantasy advice. JB, we continue to be on fire as we are now in second place in the CFL Podcast League. And we got to keep this going. I think we've won 5 in a row now, and the picks have generally been good. It was a little bit off last week. We're still, I think we're in the mid-80s. It got a little bit tight for a time, but ultimately we were winners, so let's keep this thing rolling. We had a lot of trouble deciding on a QB this week, and I think there are 3 different ways you can go at QB. So we ended up going with McLeod Bethel-Thompson because we had the money to do it. If you want to go budget, I think you've got a couple interesting options. Michael O'Connor at $7,500. It's a bit of a gamble because we don't really know what we're going to get from him, but he has got a ton of weapons. He's been in the league for a long time now. He knows the system really well. He's gotten some reps, and with all those weapons at his disposal, I expect him to put up decent numbers. And for $7,500, I think that's a pretty good bet. The other one I really like, and JB, I know you vetoed this immediately, but Nick Arbuckle starting in Edmonton, his former team. This is a revenge game, and $6,388 is a terrific price for a starting quarterback. You pay more for Bo Levi Mitchell, who is on the bench. You pay more for Drew Brown in Winnipeg. So For me, just for you taking Nick Arbuckle 6,300, I approve that. JB doesn't, so ultimately he didn't make our lineup. But I like that as a QB pick. What's your rationale, JB? You're usually a revenge game guy.
Well, that is certainly your corner. I don't like Arbuckle guy, so it wasn't a complex argument in as much as I don't think he is good at quarterbacking, so I don't want him on my fantasy team.
Fair enough. So we did have to go a little lighter at running back, but I'm pretty happy with these guys. So you got AJ Ouellette, 4,501, and Frankie Hickson, 4,000 for Saskatchewan. Morrow's out for a while. I think he's a pretty good running back. He's going to get some carries certainly, and I love him catching out of the backfield too. Just getting him in space in general, I think is a good thing. So those guys have great value. You're spending one running back's salary on having two starting guys. Receiver, we splurged a little bit. We got your man Kenny Lawler, who just keeps producing regardless of the fact that his team is terrible. 8,825, a little expensive, but he's in this league. The PPR thing is huge for him because every other target for whoever's in at quarterback for Edmonton, Cornelius recently, every other target goes to Lawler, and then he has a couple of big plays, and he usually has a touchdown. So 8,825, you know what you're getting for that. And then we're going back to Dalton Schoen. He's now in the 7,000s, but well worth it. He's playing W now, 7,028. I like him there a lot. Plus Ellingson is out, so I think more targets are going to go his way. That one just makes sense. That doesn't leave us a ton of money for our flex, but we have enough to go for Sean Bain, 3,227. We remember Sean Bain from last week. He torched McFadden early and then slowed down a little bit after that. He's a good receiver, though, and he's in again. I think who's he in for? He's in for Malik Henry, so he's going to get targets. I'm not as comfortable with Mayer as I am with Bo Levi Mitchell. Mayer's good. But he is less reliable. You just don't know exactly what you're going to get. I still think for that kind of money, Sean Bain's a good price. And then for our defense, basically everybody's 3,200. I like Winnipeg's defense. I like them against everybody, but for 3,200, when's the last time you could pick up the Winnipeg defense for that price? And they're going against Calgary, whose offense has not been great, save for last week, but they still got a boost from a defensive score. And you've got Mayer in there who probably turns the ball over at least once to get you some points. So that's our fantasy lineup for this week. Hopefully we can keep that winning streak going, and hopefully we've been able to help you out in your picks, and whether you're in a league or just doing it independently, they have been going pretty well, so hopefully that continues this week. All right, JB, we are into our picks. We both had a terrible 1-3 record last week. It's the wheels have been falling off for you for a while, but I was surprised after a 4-4 and then a 3-1 week to dial up a 1-3 performance. We got a rebound, so let's go through it. Calgary at Winnipeg. Where are you going?
I like Winnipeg at home. I think Calgary, starting with their new quarterback, Winnipeg coming off their fishing bye. I think they're going to be rested. I think they're very good. I don't think Calgary is particularly good still, despite them beating the Argos. I like Winnipeg at home for sure. Big.
Oh, I don't know if I like them big. Kadeem Carey's back, and that does change the Calgary offense. I think he's the wild card here. If he is running like he can run and having one of those games, I think it's pretty close. I still think Winnipeg's going to win. I'll pick Winnipeg. Winnipeg at home makes sense. But yeah, this I don't think it's going to be big though. Hamilton at Toronto. I'll put us down as Toronto wins, since we both said it would be 28-21. Saskatchewan, BC. Where do you go for this one? Saskatchewan at BC, the first test for Michael O'Connor.
Yeah, I backed Saskatchewan as long as I possibly could, and now I say no, Saskatchewan. I'm afraid that you are not who I thought you were, and I know BC has got the backup kid, but they are just loaded with weapons, and they're at home. I think there's not a lot of film on him, and if he's ever going to have a great game, it's going to be this game. It'd probably be a little harder moving forward. I like BC at home.
And this is played right into my hands. I'm taking Saskatchewan simply because I felt like this was the week you'd stop taking Saskatchewan, and so that's a guaranteed Saskatchewan win for me this week. But in seriousness, it's different. Like, Rourke has been playing out of his mind. He's been playing the kind of football we haven't seen in the CFL in a long, long time. And to think, and even with that, BC has been in some tight games. They've been lucky to get out of a couple of those games. To think that Michael O'Connor is going to come in and be just short of that, I think is a lot to ask of him. And I think there's a lot of pressure on him too, because I think people are looking and saying, okay, well, let's see you do this too. And that's, they're not the same. They're not the same quarterback. He does have weapons. I wouldn't be shocked if he had an amazing game. I'm hoping he does. I would love to see him succeed. I think Saskatchewan wins. Lastly, Ottawa at Edmonton. Will the winless streak at home continue for the Elks? The Elks made sure it did for Ottawa last week. Where are you going?
Yeah, these are two combatants just gutting it out in the mud. This is John Candy in stripes, and these two don't care what anybody else is doing. Don't care what's on the line. They're just going to not let Edmonton win at home the same way Edmonton would let Ottawa win at home. These two are just going to continue to punch each other out and probably should just play each other for the rest of the season. If I were commissioner, I would just say, let's Canada 72 it. 8-game series for all the honor. So I'm going to go Ottawa. I'm going to tell you, I was pretty disgusted with what you did at home. I don't know why you hate Ottawa so much. It's not bad. It's certainly better than other Ontario-related CFL cities. So Ottawa to get it done in Edmonton. I'm backing you, Ottawa.
I'm taking Ottawa too, and I hate to do it. I still think they're the better team. They looked terrible last week, but it's my thing. Revenge game for Nick Arbuckle. I think he pulls it out in the end. It's just one of those things. You'll see like a late touchdown pass from Arbuckle, and then they'll quickly show a shot of Chris Jones's face, and it will be amazing television. So that's what I'm hoping for this week, I guess. Well, that will just about do it for us on this pregame walkthrough edition of the X's and Argos podcast. For JB, this is Ben Grant from Shadow Frontenac saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.